Hello, Cliff Stanwick, Stanwick Real Estate, and today I'm talking about the future now of selling real estate in regards to the 2023 real estate market, and it's the hope of buyers and the reality for sellers. Thank you for joining me today. I'm going over what I think is something I don't normally do. I don't usually take a big view of the world. I believe real estate markets are hyper local. That the market everywhere really doesn't matter outside your community, and you don't need to worry about your community. But I've just seen so much, you know, misinformation or a very narrow view of real estate on YouTube that I wanted to make a version that I think in the long run is going to be more helpful for everyone who is in this market. So, want to start off with my disclaimer. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of the Real Estate Fixed Inc., who the speaker is employed by. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. And today, I'm not recommending anything that you shouldn't consult with your tax professional or your estate planner or your investment representative. But I have some pretty strong opinions about this housing market. And it all started again, like I shared with you guys previously. It all started with the nonsense of the real estate market. What they're not telling you about the U.S. housing market, the wild housing market. Well, you'll regret buying a house in 2023. The housing market meltdown. Wave of loan defaults. The Fed just crashed interest rates. Why you'll regret buying a home. The 10 cities where home prices will crash. No. Everything you are seeing right now isn't based on any historical data of any relevance and any importance. And today, what I'm basically going to do is I am going to go over the history of home prices. I'm going to look back what happened in 2008, which was a disaster. I'm going to look at the current market dynamics. And I'm also going to tell you why buy a home now. And then I'm going to go over strategies for buyers and sellers. The reality is homes are being sold in this market, and people are paying a lot of money to buy homes in this market. But we keep getting lost in the short term of what the real estate market is. So again, I'm going to share with you my screen, okay? And it's a little bit of an eye chart, okay? But it goes back to 1970. Goes back to 1970. And what I've done on this chart, and this is all the Federal Reserve data, right? These are the guys who ultimately play the interest rate game, okay, and the money supply game. I charted 30-year fixed rate mortgage average in the United States, average sales price of homes sold for the United States, that's in red, unemployment rate, and sticky price consumer price index. That is basically, a long story short, that is the core inflation that we deal with, okay? And I want to share with you, the reality of this housing market, okay? It started off in 1980, a house was 74,000. We hit crazy inflation. All right, we had over 10% sticky inflation. We had mortgage interest rates of 18%. And guess what happened? Housing prices went up. And housing prices, this red line, right? This red line I'm showing you, they keep going up and up and up. And then what happened to this market, right? What happened to this market? Okay. The reality is inflation doesn't matter, unemployment doesn't matter, inflation doesn't matter when it comes to home prices. Okay? And I'm going to show you a few slides here that I've screenshot off the big screen here. Okay? I'm going to show you some of the data from points in time. So basically, we had an unemployment rate of 10%. We had super high mortgage rates of 14.6%. We had sticky consumer price index, pretty similar to what we had today. And houses were $84,000, almost 87. In basically 2007, we had less inflation, less unemployment. We had 6.2% interest rates, and houses were $322,000. Okay? Then we had essentially the housing crisis. And the houses went down to 257,000. The inflation went up a little higher, and the unemployment rate was 8%. But if you go back to 1982, the interest rates were about 3 times higher for just a little bit more unemployment, right? And this is the theme here, right? And then later this year, right, or I should say later at the end of the year, okay, at the end of the year, look what happened. The inflation went down, the unemployment went up, and the interest rates went down. So kind of funny, but we still had unemployment issues, okay? And I think the thing that I want to, share with you is that all these things that happened, now we have rates at 5.4, we have low unemployment, we have relatively the same inflation, and the housing prices are $547,000. Okay, so what I'm trying to make with this point here is inflation doesn't matter, unemployment doesn't matter. Okay, the average prices have continued to go up. People have bought houses when the interest rates were 17%. And you say, wow, they bought houses were 17%, and they paid $81,000 for it. And then essentially the rates a couple years later dropped to 14, and their house went up to $100,000. And then a couple years later, they probably, again, the mortgage interest rates were 10%, and the inflation was 4.6, and the unemployment was 6, and their houses kept going up. It went up to 120,000, and it just went on a tear. So what happened? What happened in 2007 and 8? What happened in 2007 is banks decided not to loan. Okay, that's what happened in 2008. Banks stopped lending, and that has been the gist of what has happened to any price decline in the market. The banks continued to lend, right? The banks continued to lend, and prices went up, right? What happened in essentially 2007 is buyers were basically buying homes with no doc, low doc, no down payment, no skin in the game. And essentially, as these rates, essentially had gone up, when they went up from 5.4 and they went up a little bit, all of a sudden, what ended up happening is we saw, I think it was a little bit of a, it was an equity problem, right? And banking had to be reformed because of mortgage-backed securities. Lending standards had to be changed. And that meant that you could no longer have these no docs stated income loans, and the banks didn't have the ability or the liquidity to loan in this market. And because of no loans, the prices crashed. And not only did they really crash, right? I mean, essentially, the problem started in essentially in 2008, okay? And it was literally over in 3 years. And the prices basically in 2008 went from 304, right? 304 to 257. It was a 20% knock, right? That was your downside. But even if you had bought with the 20% downside, which was roughly here at in 305 in October 2007, by trying to get another bump here, by July of 2014, you were up to 340,000. So you were money ahead. And then look at the interest rates, right? The interest rates are now down at 4%, and you refied, and you either paid more of the equity off or not. So what happened later in this market, right? What happened later in this market is really an aberration. The aberration is we've never seen unemployment like this without like 17 or 18% interest rates. We had 13% unemployment, but look at the interest rate. They were down at 3%. What is the difference? Banks were lending. You could afford, with the PPP and the extra unemployment, your employment didn't get hurt. And the lending conditions, again, the housing market is powered by lending, okay? It's powered by lending, right? And I'm going to go over some data today where you're really going to see the story of how this market is powered by lending. And that all the things that you maybe spun your head around with unemployment and inflation and the economy and the mortgage interest rates, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because the reality is when you look at this screen, is look at the prices and look what happened if you had had a home before COVID, right? You went from 374. This is in the United States, right? You went from 374 to 547. And that is the average sales price, right? So that's the story about real estate. All the things about the economy, yeah, it matters, but it only matters if banks aren't making loans. Is there any indication out there that banks are not making loans? They're making loans, right? So that is the story of real estate. It always goes up. And the only time it hasn't gone up is when the banks don't lend money, or there's a systematic change to the banking issue, to the lending policies, which are basically you have to have, for the most part, some down payment. You have to be able to show 2 years of income. Okay? Those are basically the rules. And if you are, this market has now become one where there is a tremendous amount of equity. Okay? And so this market, no matter how you look at it, will never be 2008, because the story of 2008 is not only were the loans not very well written and sustainable, there was no equity. Anyone who owns a house right now has a tremendous amount of equity, more equity than they've ever had. And most people during COVID who were homeowners never were made more money than during COVID. And they got to stay home, right? So let's hop back into it. I want to go into the next part, which is talking about, I think if we go back and we look at what I'm doing here, I think I've covered off on the history of home prices. I've covered off on the situation of 2008. And now I'm going to talk about current market dynamics. And I think this is the part of the story that I hope will enlighten you about what's going on. Okay, this is, according to the Fed, existing home sales, housing inventory. And this is the total amount of units that are for sale. So basically, since last July, and it's an important time to realize because July is when the rates started spiking. Okay? This is where they almost hit 7%, and everybody went whiskey tango, right? They went nuts. Now, at the end of the year, the housing inventory dropped 35%. 35%. And it begs to differ. Why did the inventory drop, right? Why did the inventory drop? Well, the inventory dropped because you weren't seeing the prices for your homes. They weren't selling. But I think people are missing one of the biggest market dynamics in this market, okay? And that is this next chart that I'm going to share, which is the monthly supply of new homes in the United States, the existing home sales month supply. So the resale homes is this line down here on the bottom, okay? And this is basically, there's no inventory. And why isn't there no inventory? The reason there isn't any inventory is because the existing home are mostly financed with very low interest loans, probably sub 3% for 30 years, 2.5, 2.7. Majority of those homes, these people cannot afford to resell their homes because their payments are going to go up 30%, right? Their payments are going to go up because for every point that it goes up, you're basically talking about, of 10 to 15% more in monthly payments, right? So the rates went from 3% to 7%. Okay, but here's the thing. You're saying, oh my gosh, the new home supply went up, and basically the existing homes went down. So what does that mean? That means, okay, and this is a thing that I want to go over, the smartest sellers in the real estate world are new home builders, okay? They are. They are the smartest people selling homes. Okay. So let's go back and look at the screen. This is existing home sales, right? And that is the red line. And the new homes are essentially in here as well. So what you're seeing here is the new homes is a red line. So there's 790,000 new homes out there, okay? And there was almost 6 million, 5.9 million homes that were existing. So basically, by the end of the year, the new homes dropped again by 35%. The existing homes, or I should say, the new homes went down to 633,000 from 720. So they dropped 20% roughly, and the existing homes dropped 35%. That was a huge pivot in this market, okay? The huge pivot in this market was the new homes were basically being sold. Almost all the new homes were being sold. And they've always tightly managed their inventory, and they always tightly manage their pricing, okay? So the next chart here is the monthly supply of new homes in the United States and the average sales price of homes sold in the United States. So this is the validation of what I'm trying to say. They started basically building more homes. They started building new homes after COVID. And why did they build new homes? Because they got a ton of money to build new homes. The government pumped up the housing market tremendously, and they started building homes, right? They basically sold off their stuff and they went to work, okay? And April 20th, the average sales price for a new home was $360,000. Basically, in July of 2022, it was $565,000. Think about that. They went out and they built homes. Now, what does that mean? Okay. Well, you got to start looking at market forces here. Okay. This is probably one of the most key slides in my presentation today. Okay. It goes over the existing home sales, the monthly supply left. It goes over the monthly supply of new houses in the United States. It goes over the median sales price of new homes sold in the United States. It goes over the median sales price of existing homes. What does that mean to you? Okay. Well, it's going to tell you that the housing market has bifurcated, meaning there is a demand of new homes that are basically impacting all the average sales prices for the total market, because new homes are selling significantly for more money than resale homes. Okay? And I'll give you a great example of what the mistake of a first-time buyer or someone buying a home for the first time was. Okay? So this is not a happy moment. So if you look at the pricing here that of the homes, okay, at one point last June, if you bought a resale home, and this is relative because this is median, so this means half the houses were higher and half the houses were lower. But for the sake of argument, the difference between a new home on this graph and a used home was $20,000. Okay? And there's 9.4 months of new homes. So there's a lot of new homes, but the homes of the resale homes, there were still a few resale homes out there as well. But the difference was you had to come up with $20,000 to buy this home. Okay? Basically $150 a month, right? Not financial advice. I'm just saying $8 a thousand, and you got 20, that's $160 a month, right? So you bought a house. Your buddy bought a new house. You bought a resale house. Maybe because he had a VA loan and you had a FHA loan and you just couldn't get to the new house. But he bought a new house. So look what happened at the beginning of this year. His house is now worth $6,000 more, $438,000. Your house is worth $50,000 less. This is the entire point of the market. When you start looking at the way these people are talking, and you got to really understand the old adage about statistics. Liars figure and figures lie. Okay? Existing home pricing is far worth less than a new home. And if you're a buyer in this market, you shouldn't buy a used home. And you need to see that. You cannot buy a used home because you just lost $50,000 if you did it last June. You just lost 15% of your value because you bought an old home. That's not a good scenario, right? And it continues, right? It continues to sell the story of this market. Okay? The story of this market. These are the types of financing in this market. Average sales price of homes sold by types of financing. Conventional, FHA, VA, cash purchase. All the new homes are being bought by people with cash or conventional financing. All the resale homes are being bought with people that are using FHA or VA loans. That's what this data shows. Plain and simple. That's the data. So what does that mean? It means the market's It means the market's bifurcating. Okay. It means that when you see the average prices of homes, you need to wake up. All right. The average prices of homes are driven by new homes. Okay. Resale homes, they're not being sold because the owners are currently locked in to their house. Okay. Look at the difference in prices here. Just look. This is not good. Look at the money that you've lost if you bought a resale home last year versus a new home. And so when they talk about the housing market, it doesn't take into the factor that mostly new homes are being sold, right? When you get back into this market, right? When you get all the way over here and you look at the 1 year on this market, which it's loading here. When you look at the new market here, right? And you look at the loan rate and you look at the unemployment rate and the prices for these homes, right? Which again is lagging, right? $535,000, right? $535,000 is that payment, okay? Guess what? In the types of financing here, when I get over to the right, those houses are being bought by the cash buyer and the conventional financing person. But why are they doing that, right? And that gets to the next part of this discussion, all right? And again, why buy a home now, okay? And I'm going to go through my disclaimer just one more time. This material and information presented here is for general information purposes only, okay? I'm not offering tax advice. I'm not offering you financial advice. But I'm offering you essentially the solution of that housing prices always go up, okay? And I'm sure a lot of you have prepared your taxes. And there's only two ways, and I'm speaking as an old man on this one, there's only two ways that wealth is created for individuals. And that is through real estate, and that is through your retirement. So if you have liked the way the stock market is performing and you have a 401k and you want to take a loan against your 401k for a down payment for a house, or you want to buy a house because the stock market has not done anywhere near as good as this real estate market, okay? This real estate market has been, for all intents and purposes, this real estate market has been on fire, right? And why is it on fire? Because low interest rate loans and banks are still making loans and they're not tightening up funding conditions and lending conditions and credit and the quality of the buyer. And so the market took off because there was opportunities to hedge your risk in the stock market by buying a home. And so now you're buying homes. And so the smart money is buying homes, right? The people who have money are buying homes, and they're buying new homes. And why is that? They're buying new homes because long term, that home in the future will be a rental or will be something that will generate income, because that's what an asset is. It generates income if you're lucky. And there's only one thing, again, not offering financial advice here, that generates income, and that is a home. Stocks, unless you get dividends, that's income. But in general, if you're owning Apple or Google or Facebook, there's no dividend. Name another asset that will pay you income, because down in the future, you can always rent it out. And it's probably with your cheap mortgage rate that even if you bought it last summer at 5%, you're making money. And on top of it, as you've seen in this video, that asset never goes down, right? So if I was smart, I would be buying a new home. I would be buying a new home, and I would try to buy another new home as soon as I could, because in the future, that home's only going to be 15 years old if I want to rent it, or it's only going to be 5 years old if I want to rent it. It's not going to be falling apart. What is going on with the existing homes is they're all 15, 20 years old. Look at when we've had housing booms. Okay, we had a housing boom in 2006. Those houses are now 16 years old. Everything is going to start to be replaced in those homes. The roofs, the windows, the appliances, the heating and air, you name it, the stucco. Who knows? They're not, they need maintenance. They're not energy efficient. They don't have solar on them. They don't have they don't have an EV charger panel in them. They're becoming essentially money pits. But they're also assets. So you buy a new asset, right? So again, I'm going to flip back to this video, and I'm going to go back. Why am I doing it? And so why buy a home now? Okay. You buy a home now, and you only buy a new home now. Okay. You buy anything else, you're lighting money on fire. Again, my disclaimer, seek out your tax and financial professional, but you're lighting money on fire if you buy a used home. And so what are my strategies for buying a home? Okay. If you're a new buyer, you need to look at the down payment assistance programs that are out there where you can get up to 20% of the money for the down payment. You're going to be giving up a percentage of that future equity to fund that program. But, if you never sell the house, you hear what I'm saying? So listen, you need to have a plan about how you're going to buy a new home and how to get there. If you're lucky enough and have can explore the VA loan, the VA loans will allow you to essentially buy a house with 100% of your income and no down payment. Am I recommending that? No, I'm not. But if you had to come up with $20,000 to buy a new home like you did last summer, I wish I had the VA option if that's what it took. The other thing is get borrow from family and friends, get a gift letter, figure out a way to buy that new home. So that's my strategy for a first-time buyer or new to the home industry. But at the end of the day, this is a big part of your wealth creation. It's a big part of your future to not buy a used house. Buy a house less than 5 years old. That's my recommendation if you're a buyer in this market. Okay. Now, what about sellers? Okay. Sellers, it's the same story. Okay. You got an old house. You got to look at your time horizon. How many more years are you going to be working? How many more years are you going to be in the area or the neighborhood or the school? But again, if your house is 15 plus years old, my recommendation is sell it. Sell it because you're not going to see that asset appreciate anywhere near like it does. And again, you have to look at what a house is, right? And what a house has done, going back to the screen share here, is, gosh, even after COVID, it's been on a tear. But it was on a tear before. Okay, before COVID, it went from 383 in 2020. It went 383, 370 to basically 383. So that was what, 13,000. It's always been a hedge against inflation, and it's always kept up with it, right? And then even when inflation went out of control because of the government juicing up the economy with liquidity and print, it has taken off. So you've got a lot of equity. If you owned your house before 2020, you need to do an equity swap, and you need to consider buying a new home, because a new home is going to get you there. It's going to get you an asset that's not going to be with any sort of economic obsolescence like a 30-year-old old home is going to be if you hold on to it for 15 more years. So my advice again for sellers is look at your own situation. And I think again, not offering tax advice, but I truly believe that the capital gain situation is going to change, not in a good way. And what wealthy people do not do is they never sell an asset. So if you want to, you want to take a hit on your capital gains, you know, it's changed my mind personally. I'm not giving anyone advice that I want to do, but I am strongly not going to sell my house in the future. I'm better off borrowing against it. I'm better off renting it. I'm better off doing anything than selling it, unless I have a plan to swap that money into a newer and updated home. That makes a lot of sense. So I want to wrap it up. This went a lot longer than I wanted it to go. They always seem to do. But I hope you get some value out of this. This market has changed. It has changed in a matter that I don't see the housing prices really falling off. And even if they did fall off, the new homes are not falling, right? So my strategy is buy a new home. If you're in an old home, buy a new home. If you're going to buy a home, buy a new home. It's a broken record, buy a new home. And the market isn't crashing, but I will tell you that lending is going to tighten. And that's just obvious because all the small banks, the ones that are the credit unions, the ones that have these unique home programs that are usually much more, better rates and better terms, they're going away. Okay, that's my opinion. Again, the disclaimer, not offering financial, legal, or tax advice, but you need to buy a new home. And I hope you see that with the data that I've shown today. If I can help you find a new home, if I can help you sell your current home, or if I can help you figure out a way to get that new home, reach out to me. My name is Cliff Stanwick. I have a Facebook page at basically Cliff Stanwick Real Estate, YouTube, Cliff Stanwick Real Estate, website, Stanwick RE. I want to thank everybody for joining me today. I hope you see the benefit of what I'm trying to show you here. Don't buy into the nonsense of the housing market. There'll be no crash. There'll be no 2008. And the interest rate, the unemployment, the inflation doesn't matter. But you have a chance to buy a home now before it gets crazy, and you may not even be able to finance one just because things are going to get a heck of a lot tighter. And I think you're going to see the new home prices continue to go up. And the only thing that's pulling down home prices right now are existing homes. Have a great day.